Have you ever looked into the mirror and felt like you were looking at a stranger? Not in a literal sense, but in a deep, soulful way, as if there were layers of history and identity hidden just beneath your skin that you couldn't quite name? For millions of people across the Americas, Europe, and the Mediterranean, this isn't just a passing thought, it is a psychological reality. There is a silent ghost haunting the family trees of millions of people today, a ghost born in the year 1492. While the world remembers that year for the voyage of Columbus, for hundreds of thousands of others, it was the year of the Alhambra Decree, the year the Spanish monarchs gave the Jewish population a choice that would echo through their descendants' DNA for 5 centuries: convert to Catholicism, leave Spain forever, or face the flame. But what if I told you that the choice your ancestors made 500 years ago is still influencing your personality, your anxieties, and your health today? This is the story of the Sephardic exile, but more importantly, it is a guide to finding out if you are one of the lost children of Spain. We are going to dive into the psychological phenomenon of crypto-identity, the strange family rituals you might have thought were just quirks, and the specific genetic markers that can prove once and for all if you are a descendant of the Spanish exile. Because the truth is, the Inquisition didn't just end, it went underground, and it might be living inside of you. To understand why this matters, we have to look at the psychology of survival. When a group of people is forced to hide their core identity under the threat of death, it creates a unique psychological blueprint. For the conversos, those who stayed in Spain and converted to Christianity while secretly practicing their original faith, life became a high-stakes performance. Imagine the mental load of living 2 lives. In the marketplace, you are a devout Catholic. In the cellar, you are a Jew. This double life created a phenomenon that psychologists now call adaptive paranoia. It was a necessary hypervigilance. You had to watch every word, every gesture, and every meal. You couldn't trust your neighbors, your friends, or sometimes even your own children. This state of constant alert doesn't just vanish when the threat goes away. It gets baked into the family culture. It becomes a tradition of secrecy. Have you ever noticed that your family is unusually private? Maybe there's a strange reluctance to talk about the past, or an unexplainable fear of authority figures and government lists. In many Hispanic and Mediterranean families, this culture of the secret is the first psychological clue of a Sephardic origin. But the evidence goes deeper than personality traits. It's actually written into your biology. In 2008, a landmark study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Researchers tested the DNA of men across the Iberian Peninsula and found something staggering. Approximately 20% of the population in Spain and Portugal has significant Sephardic Jewish ancestry. That means 1 in 5 people in that region are descendants of the very people the Inquisition tried to erase. And because of the massive migrations to the New World, these genetic markers have spread across Mexico, the American Southwest, Brazil, and beyond. If you have roots in these areas, the odds are higher than you think. There are specific markers to look for. One of the most famous is the Cohen-Modal haplotype, a specific genetic signature found on the Y chromosome of men who descend from the ancient priestly class. But even if you don't have that specific marker, geneticists look for J1 and J2 haplogroups, which are common in Middle Eastern and Mediterranean populations but rare in Northern Europe. If your DNA test shows a surprising percentage of Southern European, North African, or Middle Eastern ancestry that doesn't seem to match your known family history, you might be looking at the fingerprint of the exile. But here is where it gets truly fascinating from a psychological perspective, the concept of epigenetics. Scientists have discovered that trauma can actually leave chemical marks on our DNA. In studies of Holocaust survivors and their children, researchers found that the stress response of the offspring was altered, even though they hadn't experienced the trauma themselves. They inherited a biological readiness for danger. Now apply that to the Sephardic experience. For over 15 generations, your ancestors lived with the threat of the Inquisition. They lived with the fear of being found out. This creates a specific psychological profile, a heightened startle response, a deep-seated need for autonomy, and a subconscious drive to keep one's true self hidden. Does this sound like you? Do you feel a strange, irrational need to always have an exit plan in any situation? This might not just be your personality. It might be an epigenetic echo from the 15th century. Let's talk about the cultural tells. These are the pattern interrupts in your family history that usually provide the first spark of realization. Often people discover their heritage not through a lab test, but through a memory of a grandmother's strange habit. Did your family have a tradition of lighting candles on Friday nights, perhaps hidden in a closet or behind a curtain? Did they sweep the dust toward the center of the room instead of out the door? This was a converso tradition to avoid showing disrespect to the threshold where a mezuzah might have once been. Did your mother always check eggs for tiny spots of blood and throw them away if she found any? Did your family avoid pork but without ever giving a religious reason, perhaps claiming it was just unhealthy or made them feel sick? These behaviors are psychological fossils. They are the remnants of a religious identity that was stripped of its name but kept its form.
When the meaning behind the action was too dangerous to speak out loud, the action itself became the memory. This leads to what psychologists call identity dissonance. Many people who discover their Sephardic roots describe a sudden sense of clicking into place. They finally understand why they never quite felt at home in the religion they were raised in, or why they felt a magnetic pull toward Jewish culture, music, or history. It's as if their subconscious was holding onto a piece of the puzzle that their conscious mind didn't have access to. If you are questioning your own history, start by looking at your surnames. While names like Perez, Rodriguez, or Guzman are incredibly common, there are specific Sephardic versions or family lineages associated with specific towns in Spain like Toledo or Seville that were major Jewish centers. But names can be changed. The real evidence lies in the geography of your family tree. Did your ancestors move to frontier areas? The Inquisition was strongest in the big cities. The Sephardim who wanted to keep their secrets often moved to the most remote places they could find, the mountains of New Mexico, the deep interior of Brazil, or the islands of the Caribbean. They were looking for the psychological safety of distance. As we wrap up this exploration, I want you to consider the power of reclaiming this identity. In the world of psychology, narrative identity is the story we tell ourselves about who we are. When a part of that story is suppressed, when there is a hole in the family history, it can lead to a sense of rootlessness. By uncovering the DNA evidence and the psychological clues of your Spanish exile ancestry, you aren't just doing a genealogy project. You are performing an act of psychological healing. You are bringing the hidden self into the light. You are proving that the Inquisition failed, because 500 years later, you are still here, and you are finally remembering. So, have you seen these signs in your own family? Have you taken a DNA test and found results that left you with more questions than answers? I want to hear your story in the comments. Have you noticed these psychological traits or strange traditions in your own life? Your story might be the missing piece for someone else. If you found this deep dive into the psychology and genetics of identity fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We're going to continue exploring the hidden forces that shape who we are, from the secrets in our blood to the stories in our minds. Your history is waiting to be rediscovered. Don't let it stay hidden for another 500 years.